Hello, and thank you for viewing this video from the Center for Inclusive Excellence on Equity-Minded Faculty Evaluation. My name is Lot Hill, and this is the first of 3 videos on equity-minded faculty evaluation. In this first segment, I will provide an overview of where and how bias shows up in the faculty evaluation process. In the second video, our colleague Dr. Nora Schultz will review the faculty evaluation process here at SDSU. And in the third segment, the two of us will share takeaways on how to prepare for and mitigate the potential for bias in the evaluation process. The learning outcomes for this program include participants will learn how bias can inform and impact faculty evaluation processes. Participants will also identify where and how there are policy and practice gaps that may result in evaluator bias, and will learn and develop strategies for mitigating the potential of bias in the faculty evaluation process. Before we consider where and how bias may show up in the faculty evaluation process, I'd like to offer us the chance to briefly review the concept of implicit bias and make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to an agreed upon understanding. Bias refers to our preference for something over something else. It's based on the accumulation of our experiences, and bias is a normal part of the human experience. It is not good nor bad in and of itself. Implicit bias refers specifically to the attitudes or stereotypes that affect our understanding, actions, and decisions in an implicit manner that could lead to inequities. Implicit bias is informed by expectations and evaluations about groups that operate outside of conscious control. We all experience implicit bias, and it is completely normal that we do, though unexamined implicit bias can result in behaviors and actions that are not equitable or in keeping with our own perceived values. We'd like to share with you these principles for equity-minded faculty evaluation as articulated in a series of reports from the American Council on Education, or ACE, on the topic of equity-minded faculty evaluation. These principles provide us with a useful framework through which to consider some of the areas where bias can show up in our own faculty evaluation processes. We'll talk briefly about each of these principles by way of identifying some of the common ways that faculty evaluation processes leave room for evaluator bias. The guiding principles for equity-minded faculty evaluation, as articulated by the American Council on Education, include transparency, clarity, accountability, consistency, context, credit, flexibility, agency, and representation. To review each of these principles that the ACE report suggests are potential areas where bias may influence faculty evaluation at most institutions, we'll explore a series of questions that we can reflect upon as we consider how we mitigate bias on our own campus. And in the second video today, Nora Schultz will be asking you to consider how these principles might help us identify the ways specifically to mitigate the potential for implicit bias in the 3 areas of faculty evaluation at SDSU. So you may also want to be thinking about that now. In the area of transparency, ACE asks us to consider, is salient information related? Faculty evaluation intentionally shared, accessible? Consider if there may be any salient information or expectations which evaluators know that may not be available or obvious to candidates. Clarity. Is information provided in a way that is easily understood? Is there ambiguity that could invite bias, guessing, and misinterpretation? Consider where there may be ambiguity or where there is room for interpretation and how that may leave room for bias. Accountability. Are there responsible actors and steps identified if faculty evaluation processes and practices are not followed? Are there common deviations that might be foreseen? And is there a process for addressing them clearly laid out in the policy? In the area of consistency, ACE asks us to consider, are essential parts of the faculty evaluation process standardized and applied consistently so that when the same kind of activity is evaluated or procedure enacted, faculty can expect similar treatment? If units are allowed to differ, are there disciplinary or field reasons for those differences? Context. Do the policies and practices provide ways to bring relevant contexts into view for the evaluation of faculty work? Does the evaluation invite comparisons that do not fit the circumstances? Regarding credit, do faculty evaluation processes recognize mission critical work, meaning mentoring, institutional service, diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts? And do policies provide a way to differentiate between levels of effort when it's important to do so? Flexibility. Are faculty evaluation processes flexible enough to adapt to new, different, and changing sets of contexts that shape faculty careers and work? Agency and representation. Do policies ensure faculty rights for notification of the status of the case, along with clarification as needed? Do policies provide ways for candidates to represent themselves in ways that are advantageous to their careers? And finally, can faculty expect that they will be evaluated by colleagues who understand the relevant context of their work, meaning the appointment type, the field, the methods, and the epistemologies as relevant? This has been a very brief overview on the ACE report on equity-minded reform of faculty evaluation. This concludes part one of this three-part series from the Center for Inclusive Excellence on equity-minded faculty evaluation. I hope that you'll take some time to watch the second video as our colleague Dr. Nora Schultz reviews our faculty evaluation processes here at SDSU and how these principles from the ACE report inform how we mitigate the potential of bias in faculty evaluation on our campus. And in the third video, we'll share takeaways for anyone involved in evaluating faculty. Thank you very much.